like to again welcome you back to our segments on batting. And understanding the sources of power that we have whenever we use the human body is extremely important. And in batting, there's several different theories on how to develop power and how to be a good, consistent hitter. The first style would be what would be termed a linear hitter. Linear means just they use a straight path to the ball. They have very little rotation. Everything is pretty much linear out here, and we want to hit the ball out front. Boom. Very short, compact, and very much a pull down with the arms, just like if I was going to pull the pulley, and boom. And again, short, compact. I think a good, consistent way to hit. The other way to hit, and I think the most popular today as far as younger players, is rotational hitting. And rotational hitting is simply where we pivot around a single axis as if it's going straight down through our head and to our pelvis and into the ground, and we're just going to rotate around that point. And there's some merit to this type of hitting. It's fairly good for power. It can be quick with the hits, but it also can be misunderstood. And what I mean by that is that people sometimes they get their hits first and leave their hands back, which puts them in a pretty weak position. Sometimes the way that you have to swing the bat, it doesn't allow you to adjust the planes quite as well as what you could in other styles. And plus you don't get out of the batter's box quite as fast. So if you're a faster player, maybe a left-hander, maybe a linear form of hitting would be better for you. But what I'm going to talk about today is really none of those. As a matter of fact, I think that many people in major leagues use it, but I think it's a lost art as far as people understanding how to teach it. And the reason is I think people have been clouded by linear, rotational, and they've lost sight of actually how to teach what most good hitters have done for as long as I've been alive. And whenever we talk about our source of power, you can ask yourself, if I was going to test my strength, which would be the best way to test my strength? If I was going to do deadlifts, would I lift my weight like this? Reach down, grab the bar, pick it up, and through that you notice that I'm using the large parts of my legs, and I'm extending this part of my stomach, the core, as I'm coming up. Or if I was doing this, would I take a pulley and hook some weight to it, the same amount of weight? Could I pull as much weight pulling like this as I can lifting like this? Well, I think the question is really pretty simple. That using the larger muscles, the core muscles, versus turning this way would be stronger. Now, this way I'm using both legs. This way I'm actually pulling with one leg. So even if I were to get on one leg and lift, possibly I could still lift more this way than I can lift this way. And so when we talk about generating power, we're talking about is using this movement. If I wanted to jump as high as I can jump, and I jumped up and threw my arms up, that would be stronger than if I tried to spin myself around and jump up as high as I could. And so there's some disadvantages to purely rotational hitting that I want to address. what we want to do in hitting is we really want to combine all the aspects that really help us. And some things can't be used together. You can't be both rotational and linear. Some people say, well, my concept is a mix of both. You can't do that because they're just two different movements. Some people would say that I want to pull with my arms. I want to really get a good pull down, just like I'm, pulling something through. Now that movement can be used with other systems. So if I use a pulling motion right at the beginning of my swing to start that, I can implement that. So how do we use our hips like this versus like this? Well, it's really pretty simple. What we have to do is we have to bend our knees. Now, when we talk about this type of hitting, I don't even know what you call it, to be honest with you. I call it thrusting with my hip, using circles to hit. And the reason is that this is normally used when people lift their elbow. The body is a system of circles, and if implemented correctly, you can increase your power using those circles. For instance, if I was to punch, just a straight punch, I can punch so fast, and I can hit somebody, blow their nose pretty good. But if I were to use a circle and punch, I could add a great deal more energy to the punch. So, what people do whenever they bat like this is they're actually using circles within the elbow process here, going from a circular movement into a linear movement. The same thing here, through the drop down of our leg and thrust forward with our hip, we're actually using our knee in a circle and our ankles in a circle. So our ankles are working in a circle, our knee is working in a circle, and our hip is actually thrusting forward just like if it was going to complete that circle. So basically what we're doing is we're breaking down on our back leg here, opening a path for this hip to flow through, and we're extending this hip. Now, that's very different than just going and turning. It's actually different muscle group to some degree. It's using that same muscle group in a different sequence. So through this process, notice that my hands actually come with my hips. And one way to study hitting is to look at it backwards. And if you were to study in backwards sequence from the time that the ball is hit by most major league batters, and you work yourself backwards, what you will find is that they're making contact with the ball at the point that this hip is completing its extension. So, at the time that the hip is here, these hands are here. You see a lot of people doing this. They turn their hips and their hands are way back. They bring their hands through and then they hit. Well, we don't want the bat head to lag behind our hips. What we want is we want our hips to generate the power and the speed in which we are going to use our hands. So if we were, boom, here. And you notice it's not a circular movement, it's a forward extension that is taking place. Now I can use this with a closed stance here. Boom. And you notice that I'm using a forward extension coming through here. It's not a